Dear colleagues, good morning. Thank you very much for your interest in the third international conference that the Corporate University of Sberbank is hosting together with the European Management Fund and Sberbank's fund Contribution to the Future. This conference is hosted under the slogan More Than Just Learning. In 2016, we spoke about how to train leaders in the digital world. Last year, we spoke about what the challenges to continuous learning are from the new employment world. This year, it's about the development of digital skills. Let me say right off the bat that we do not intend to speak just about the digital skills. We need to talk about the challenges at large that the fourth industrial revolution is engendering for the educational organizations around the world, and about the length and breadth of new skills that the people require in the new world. It is my great pleasure to see in this room in excess of 600 participants, just like last year. We are hosting this conference for a very broad range of experts in education. And this year, about half of this audience represent leading universities and business schools, secondary schools for that matter, that we invited them this year as well. And the second half represent the corporate world, the largest Russian and international companies. And it is my great pleasure to say that executives from 24 Russian corporate universities are in this room. As usual, we host this conference in one day, but it's very intensive, 3 plenary sessions, 5 sections this year. And again, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to draw your attention to the Educational Startups exhibition in the first floor. I think this is mandatory these days for any discussion of any problems that we face. And right now, I would like to give the floor for a welcome address to the Deputy General Director of the European Management Development Foundation, Martin Müller.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the European Foundation for Management Development, EFMD, I wish you a very warm welcome to this third Beyond Learning conference at Sberbank Corporate University. We feel honored to co-host this event now for the third time, and it begins to feel like a tradition. The topic, Closing the Digital Skills Gap, is very timely. All of our members around the world, be they academic institutions or from the corporate sector, see that as one of their top, if not the top priority, to successfully master the digital transformation and to engage their workforce and managers and build the skills and capabilities needed, and this in a relatively rapid period of time. So I wish you all a very interesting day with lots of insights, ideas, and inspirations that you can take back home to your organizations tonight. Thank you for joining.
Ну что ж, и последние 2 вводных комментария уже мои коллеги.
Yes, and 2 more introductory comments. My colleagues introduced the OneSpeak, our interactive system. Please use it, starting from the very first panel session. Do put the questions. Whatever questions get the most number of likes, we're going to comment right away. On all the other questions, we're going to try to answer in other formats. Please remember the feedback on this conference. We will greatly appreciate it to improve our further conferences. Again, let's roll. And I would like you to screen the first video that is going to set the mood for our discussion. Today, digitization has become the foundation for the strategy, not just for the leading companies, but a foundation for the development of the entire economy of a country. What is the competitive advantage in the 21st century? Perhaps the answer to this question is creating new knowledge. Knowledge management requires the ability to manage digital technologies. If the business does not develop in the digital field, it is already trailing. The global change in application of financial and digital technologies lead to financial companies competing not just between themselves, but with the IT companies as well. To survive in this competition, you need to develop certain digital skills. They are digital literacy, communications, collaboration, creating digital content, cybersecurity, and the ability to solve digital issues in the digital environment. But mastering all the digital skills cannot be a goal unto itself. Yes, you can learn the current coding language, but to be relevant over the long term as an employee, you need not just to be well-versed in a specific technology. You need to be able to understand what the next thing is. According to IBM, over half of global corporations have problems in finding employees with the next skills. Skills in working with PCs and software, STEM skills, ability to communicate efficiently and effectively in a business environment, flexibility and adaptability. The core goal used to be efficiency and effectiveness in using labor resources. By simplifying, how do you turn a human into a robot? These days it's different. How do you turn a human into a human? These days digital skills are no longer optional. They became a core competency as much as mastering the skills of English if you want to be competitive in the labor market. Machine learning and data analysis, that's new literacy, and you need to be well-versed in it. Learning these skills requires changing the content and the model of education. Big chain, AI, biometrics, robotics. It's just a small list of the technologies that we think to be critically important. The role of the teachers is changing. Well, teachers are more likely to have to form the tasks and the sequence of ever increasingly complex tasks that are going to lead you to the understanding of what it takes to be a professional in a given area. Data analysis is a mandatory skill not just for the people in technology. Data processing, data analysis is applied so widely that in Skoltech, for instance, we give a general course just for all students across the board. Starting from 2018, all the 46 bachelor's degrees will include a data culture course. People must adapt to the requirements of today. You know, the education system has essentially remained the same over the past couple of hundred years. The same paper, the same pen, same pencil. You know, to train technological skills, we need to use technological products. According to Gartner, the top 10 edtech includes digital confirmation of competences, predictive analytics, and nudge tech, the nudging towards skills. In other words, creation of the architecture of motivation. When digital skills become a new literacy, the common element for training all the skills is something that requires discussing this issue. What models of educational organizations meet the challenges of the digital world? How the new training methods should be different, and what the new roles of the teachers are, and what the educational technologies are the most relevant for training digital skills. What is the right balance between the digital skills, hard and soft skills? How do you train all the three of them? Okay, dear colleagues, I suggest we start discussing these and any ancillary issues. And I would like to invite our panelists for the very first panel. The Chief Executive Officer and Chairman of the Executive Board of Sberbank, Mr. Herman Gref. Vice President of IBM, Michael King. General Director of Pemandu Associates, Idris Yalla from Malaysia. The Rector, the President of Skolkovo Institute of Technology, Mr. Kulishov. Mr. Arjantsev, the Dean of the Computer Science Department from the Higher Education, from this Higher School of Economics. Ms. Zabolotny, the Director of School 21, and Mr. Pollock, the CLO and co-founder of 6Ds company. Thank you very much, dear panelists, for willingness to take part in this panel, in this discussion. We're very proud to have such a stellar panel of international and domestic experts. Indeed, the overall set of issues related to how people and companies and organizations adapt to the challenges of the fourth industrial revolution is very relevant to all educators across the globe. Today we are facing not just the radical challenges, but also the need to respond as radically in education that we do. Just a couple of days ago, as we were finishing the preparation of this conference, we heard the news that MIT is launching the new initiative with a similar, with a pretty current cost of project, $1 billion. They are now putting together a college of computing, a college of computer science. Very interestingly, Raphael Rolf, as he opened this project, he said that this project is not going to be training just a new generation of people in computer science. It is going to be pursuing initiatives general to all the educational issues that MIT is covering. On the other hand, we are saying that the conventional paradigm of education is about a production, it's about managing programs, it's about furnishing just skills to students, and this is hopelessly outmoded as such. So this panel session is going to discuss how do you form these new digital skills, what are the digital skills to form, what approaches should be abandoned with great decision. And I would like to say that our panel includes leaders from wonderful educational projects, some already operational, some nascent, and we will be happy to find what they have to say on all the issues in hand. And I would like to give the floor, first off, to Michael King, the Vice President of IBM, the Vice President for Global Education Industry. Very recently, IBM held a global survey, a global study on these very issues of digital skills. Michael, you have the floor. Whatever you have to say for us.
Thank you. And it's an honor to be here. I appreciate the invitation. And what I'll try to do is set the stage with what we see in IBM. I'm responsible for our business in schools and universities around the world. I work quite closely with our HR team, and we are wrestling as a company with the challenge of digital skills, and we see this certainly with our clients and in every region and country where we operate. The challenge that is confronting both education and industry is quite significant. In fact, we call this a study facing the storm, referring to this perfect storm of challenge around skills. What we did, and I worked with our Institute of Business Value, we interviewed almost 6,000 people around the globe to try to understand and quantify this challenge of the skills gap that we hear about. We interviewed people from academia, from industry, from workforce policy groups at government levels and others to kind of understand what they think the skills gap is. And what we found, not surprisingly, was there are three main factors that are driving this skills gap. The first is obviously the rate and pace of technology innovation. Moore's law is not slowing down. Tremendous new technologies emerging daily, and so that technology obviously drives demand for new skills. But the thing that was probably most significant was almost 85% of the CEOs that we interviewed felt that technology was going to transform their industry. And so it's not just a technology challenge, it's an impact to the business, and the traditional business models and their industries are changing. We're also finding across all industry sectors that the growth of technology is enabling customers to have greater voice, greater choice, more engagement, and that's also changing the landscape for educators. And of course, this creates some challenges around the global skills themselves, where there's the gap between what industry requires and what educational institutions are providing. So that's the mix of skills is changing. There's a lot of uncertainty about the skills that are required, as well as uncertainty around whether or not those skills are actually available in a region. So what we found in terms of the number 1 issues, the top skill requirements that industry was looking for and weren't finding from the educational sector were really what we're referring to today as digital skills, the basic familiarity with computing and programming, the ability to use technology in a business capacity, and being able to communicate that at a business, in a business context. Probably one of the things that was most challenging to the folks I work with in the education sector is that there was not a strong vote of support from industry and others that education was doing a good job in addressing this skills gap. Only about half of the industry respondents felt that they were getting what they needed from educational institutions. And what I tell a lot of educational institutions is it's not necessarily that they're being deficient, but the rate and pace of change in industry is so significant today versus what it has been 30 years ago that that skills gap is growing because of the changes in industry. And I think that means the message I have for educational institutions is they've got to do a much better job to be much more rapid in how they adapt to these changes. So what we found were some solutions. On the good side, the good news here was that there were a few things that were critically important for regions to get right. First is beginning to bridge the gap between education and industry and building what we call regional ecosystems, but really beginning to build the collaboration, the communication between industry and academia so that, one, we can begin to bridge the skills gap. Investing in proven solutions. There are actual solutions, many of these technology-based, that can help remediate and solve this skill gap. And the third point we found and that we thought was very important was the need to empower the individual. And I think there's a lot of interesting technologies evolving today that ultimately can put the individual at the center of this problem, where we can begin to personalize instruction and education for that individual over the course of their entire life. And one of the things that when we talk about this ecosystem was we got very, very strong support from industry around the value of these digital ecosystems, or the business and academic ecosystems. I represent IBM in the Business Higher Ed Forum in the United States, which is focused a lot of CEOs, university presidents. We've published several papers on data science, other domains, but these kinds of regional cooperatives are beginning to prove quite important. We've now engaged the Business Roundtable and is beginning to do regional pilots with universities and sponsoring corporations to try to begin to bring this ecosystem together. One thing I'll point out on this chart when we looked at these solutions that stands out is there was a strong belief that beginning to develop micro-credentials, as we call them, also referred to as badges, but ways for people to earn various skill credentials that don't require a 2-year or 4-year commitment to a particular degree. And so that's something that we've invested in. We now offer badges in various IT disciplines from IBM. We do this for our employees, we do it for our business partners that work with IBM technologies, but increasingly we're finding clients doing this. We now have several collaborations with universities where we jointly credential a skill in data science or cybersecurity. And so we're finding that that provides a lot of value because people can get very short snippets of education. They can continually come back for lifelong education, and using these badges as a way to signal the skills that they have. In fact, again, this came out for policy executives at government levels to think about how do you encourage the development of these certificate or credentialing programs that can provide an individual some kind of a skill credential in a shorter period of time. And so when we think about empowering the individual, we were developing a lot of solutions and technologies, leveraging artificial intelligence and other types of technologies that can ultimately transform the way we deliver education. I think our vision is ultimately that we empower the individual, that they have a wallet or a collection, if you will, of these digital skill credentials that they can carry with them throughout their life. And perhaps, not just banking at Sberbank with their dollars, but maybe they bank their skills there. And how can we use that skills wallet over time to put a variety of new kinds of AI services around the individual? We've launched an AI tutor with Pearson in part of our portfolio. We're doing some work with AI career coaches. And so I think there's an opportunity to really transform the way we deliver education and personalize it much more to the individual going forward.
Thank you very much, Michael. Very, very impressive approach. I would like to ask to speak next Mr. Idris Yalla, who is coming from Malaysia, but today is working globally on his high-performance management approach for government agencies. And this is really a new area for digital transformation discussion. So, Idris, the floor is yours. Can you share your comments with us?
Thank you. I have a few things to say. The first one is the golden rule in my mind is that if you want to apply the digital technology in the way that government operates, and if you apply that in the old way of working, it's not going to work. That means if you have a current bureaucracy that exists, current policies and procedures that exist in a government, and all that you're doing is you're putting a new technology to automate that, that is not going to make any radical change in the way things are going. So I would begin by saying that you have to fundamentally bring an entirely new way of working to the workplace, whether it's in the government or whether in the corporate world. Then only you apply the technology onto that new way of working, then you see real transformation happen. I've worked in Shell for 23 years, and I'm a veteran of oil and gas. I was also CEO of Malaysia Airlines, and I spent 6 years as a minister in our government in Malaysia. In my experience, it is absolutely critical that we have to come with a transformational way of working. Let me quickly dissect some of the approaches in terms of providing solutions in the way forward and where the digital capability can fit into that. First of all, I think the first step in my mind is that the leadership must put in what I call the true north, which is putting goals and targets that are incredibly tough, which means that the old way of working, no matter how hard you do it, you will not achieve that target. You will only be able to achieve that goal unless you come with completely new way of doing it, new technologies, new concepts, entirely new way of doing it. So the role of the leadership is to set true north that I call impossible targets. The second thing that you needed to do is, I have to run with this relatively quickly, is to gather people, break down the silos, put them together in what we call laboratories. That means gather all the folks from marketing department, from sales department, from technology department. In the government, we did that with the private sector and the government. We locked them in the room for 6 weeks full time. And we tell them in 6 weeks full time, you do the data analysis, you do the problem solving, you go into detail, whatever is needed to sort it out, you stay there until you come with the solution. The motto of the lab is Hotel California. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. That's what you do in the lab. That's a new way of working. The third approach is to then exhibit the recommendation of the labs through the general public or your stakeholders for check, for pressure testing. The fourth one is to write a document about your concrete promises exactly the promise that you're going to deliver. And the fifth one is to cascade KPI targets to all the implementers, all the leaders at the beginning of each year and hold them accountable. And the sixth one is making sure every week there's a dashboard on Friday with traffic light using digital technology. On Friday, they receive on the iPad. If it's red colored item, you did not do a good job. If it's green color, you've done a very good job. If it's amber, you did half. Why on Friday? Because you can spoil their weekend. If the boss can send a small message on WhatsApp, said, this item was red last week, the same item is red this week now, what are you going to do differently on Monday so that next Friday it becomes green? Then all hell will break loose. So that's what I mean by new way of working. You've got to relentlessly pursue this. And then the monitoring must be done continuously, and the problem solving must be done. Every week, leadership is about problem solving. To me, the role of leadership is only two: setting priorities and tough targets, which is the true north. Second one is helping to solve problems. If leaders are not exhibiting the leadership behaviors of working with the troops to solve problems, they're not doing their job. So really, I believe the new way of working is about solving problems. By the way, solving problems is not a digital realm alone. It requires a myriad of things that you need to do to solve it. And number 7 is validation of results annually and performance assessment. Again, you can use technologies to do that. And number 8 is to report out the results. So you should publish a document that provides the score of everybody in the government, in the public domain, the scores of the ministers, who is number 78%, which minister number 50%, which minister, and the list of what they said they will do, what have they delivered, what they haven't delivered. In the corporate world, the more you do that, you put the feet as close to the fire as possible. Then you find the pressure. Billie Jean King once said, pressure is privilege. So you put the feet close to the fire, then you find pressure. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in my mind, these are the transformational way of working. You can apply every step along the way, the digital technology. My own experience is that regardless of how much we say we're short of staff, if you put people in a laboratory and give them the tough challenge all together in 6 weeks, you will find human ingenuity at their best. People are at the best when the backs are against the wall. Time and again, we did this work. We did a similar project at Rosavtodo. It's the Russian government agency. We ran a lab for 6 weeks. We got all the players in the room. It was incredible. I put everybody in the room. The results, the recommendations was quite astounding for a 6 weeks period. And my team and I were privileged to work with the Russian Export Center. We ran a lab. We didn't quite run the lab for altogether 6 weeks, and they decided to do it halfway through. And the results was quite phenomenal too, getting people together. So I'm of the view that saying that we're short of talent is an excuse. The best thing to do is to put people in the room and tell them this is the challenge. You stay there for 6 weeks. You figure out how to do it. Human ingenuity is at its best when our back's against the wall. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Idris. Just eyes-opening, insightful comments. Very important that you mentioned that digital transformation require the skill which is problem solving. And it's really a different one that people would probably expect in discussing digital transformation. But I may share also that at Sberbank, problem solving is one of the most required skill and the most desired skill by our employees. At our corporate university, in our planning for 2018, we probably forecasted this demand, and we were completely wrong. For the second half of 2018, we added about 500 new slots for this course in problem solving for the only reason that our managers requested this training as a top priority for them. Well, during the first two very insightful comments, we heard a lot of very innovative and really path-breaking ideas. Michael said that we don't need degrees, we need badges, and we need wallets with collection of badges. Idris was speaking about really quite a number of very striking new ideas. But preparing this panel and this conference, we wanted to focus on really very, very new approaches to education, which are somehow blowing up the traditional approaches to how universities should work. And we prepared a report for this conference, which all you have. And there are 6 cases of these innovative approaches, and I'm really happy that some of them are presented in this panel. And let me start giving a word to a charming lady among us here in this group, which runs an initiative which really contradicts what universities think about training programmers, preparing software programmers. Traditionally, also in our country, you can become a software programmer after completing a degree in applied math faculty at university. But today we see a very innovative approach, which Valeria will explain in a second, which has no professors, no grades, and even more striking, people are accepted to this program and are very successful graduating from this program without any preliminary technical education. Я очень рад представить Валерию Заболотную, директора школы 21.
Valeria Zabolotna and School 21. It is my great pleasure to give you the floor. Please, a few words. Yes, thank you so much. I thought I would speak in English, but since Valery Kaskala asked me to talk in Russian, I will talk in Russian. So Peter Drukin in 20th century said that we are living in unprecedented times when the huge amount of people, I mean, the growing amount of people have now the choice, and a person can now, an individual can now manage their fate individually, and this society is not ready for that. So this society is not ready for that. That's one of the reasons, you know, how to make decisions, how to make choices, and the educational environment should be kind of responsible for that. And the concept of School 42 is a kind of an alternative of the educational paradigm. It is a shift, really. It has been developed really nicely in terms of the methodology. It is based on social and constructivism approach. This approach of René, Piaget, Vygotsky, it has been validated for the last 100 years as the most efficient one. But the colleagues from School 42 for quite a while have been developing the architecture of the educational solution. They have been doing it for 12 years, and this approach now helps to implement the new method of educating the developers and programmers, and they're using a totally different approach. Mr. Kachkala already mentioned some of the unique attributes of this model, but I would focus on 3 perhaps. First of all, this is a digitalized platform. It has a gamification and gaming element. It is a kind of a role-play gaming when you hone your skills. We have 17 skills, and these are not only technical skills but soft skills as well. And each user, each student can see his or her profile, and they can see what skills are improved, what skills need more improvement, and each communication, each project, each new task that you complete gives you the necessary experience that helps you to balance your profile properly and to understand where to move next. The next element is the dream of any student, meaning full individualization of the educational experience. That means that our students select themselves where to go and what specialization, what portfolio of projects and skills and knowledge they want to get. We do not measure it with academic years, but by levels. Yes, everyone starts with one starting point. Yes, at some point they are, building the foundation, and they're moving with the same speed. They have a low level of understanding how hardware, software works, but the more they move ahead, the more they have the opportunities they can select. So they can select their own projects or areas. And the third very important element is the peer-to-peer education. There are no teachers or no mentors whatsoever at all. And there was an interesting research, once that has been presented at one of the panels, and together with this AI, they use AI tools to get the thoughts and insights from the educational experts. What are the trends in education? What models and what major changes can we expect in the educational paradigm? What will be the shifts there? And one of the areas from 5 that were clustered and filtered and categorized by the AI is peer-to-peer education. So perhaps peer-to-peer education is going to be one of the priorities, because each student can get the mark, the grade, only after minimum of 4 peer-to-peer sessions. And if you understand that one task can be solved from using another approach, you can use other methods, you can use other points of information, and so on and so forth. And by getting all these different perspectives, you get the broader knowledge. And it's very hard to imagine a teacher, a professor, who would give you different options of resolving this or that task. And so this school understands that perfectly well, and this is why it gives you all the perspectives. There used to be no online education as an education of the future. As a tool, it is cool, it's great. We are digitized in much contact, but as a massive trend, online education is not there. So for us, it is of critical importance to have the infrastructure. On this basically 5,000 square meters of space, we have the educational clusters that are open space. We have workspaces. It is a high-tech space, broadband internet, and you have access to the program tools and your colleagues. That's it. There are some socializing areas as well, and it's very important. And this model works on large classes. When you have 20 students, it's not efficient. But when you have 500 students, it is very important that you have not only the educational part, but you have a lot of events and competitions, meeting with companies and other interesting people to make sure that you have a broader perspective of the world, to understand the strategy, where the company goes, what are the trends, what the companies want, and what skills are relevant. And we have these venues as well in the school. We have the recreational entertainment areas. People just, dive in this information environment, this information swimming pool, so to speak, and they can play a video game. They can go on the kitchen and with their own lunch prepared by their mothers, and they can play ping pong. It's all socializing. It's very important for the school. And the design, the interior design, is inspiring. Really, it is minimalistic, yet it encourages you to maximally concentrate yourself on the major task, on the task number 1, meaning the education. Now, 2018 was a major challenge because we have, in May, on the 27th of May, we signed an agreement with School 42 in August. The first 500 people went to the new kind of a swimming pool early stage. It was 4 weeks of life taken from these people because they spent 10-14 hours per day to swim through that swimming pool stage, basically. No weekends, and more than 80,000 applications were sent. More than 30,000 online tests were completed. The tests are required to get to the personal interview, and we have organized interviews with more than 2,000 young people who would be ready to go to this alternative education model. And we have a third swimming pool stage going on right now, but we have some platform, we have some networking events and opportunities. We have some suggestions from our students, and our students and graduates help our new students to network, and we have the feedback from them. What would they like to see in the school? This is a fantastic unlocking of the potential of each person and each student. Now, talking about the success stories, School 42, well, I mean, first of all, it has been working for only 5 years, but right now we have 17 campuses around the world, and that testifies to the fact that this methodology has been highly praised by the employers. So there is a kind of a ranking that actually shows that School 42 is the best school for educating and training the developers and making sure that they are in line with the realities of their future jobs. So, you know, each of this person is a success story, is an individual and unique success story. The average profile of a Russian student is a young guy. Usually, these are the guys under 22, so they're just after the high school, and they get this education. And the second half are someone who already have some experience, and they either want to completely change their life or to solidify the foundation and pave the way for future success. We are very proud that in each swimming pool stage we have every fourth is a girl, and it is a very good indicator around the world, even in Paris. And the leading schools 42 around the world, the share of women is 10–12%. And the fact that this education is so in demand encouraged us to think that we would love to see such a school not only in Moscow, but in the regions.
Большое за это вдохновляющее очень выступление. Я думаю, что здесь коллеги из компании.
Thank you very much for this inspiring talk, Valeria. I think the colleagues from the universities and from companies would really give it a thought when they learned why École 42, that was born in Paris, is now launched in Russia, and why people are going into School 21 and not opting for more conventional tracks in education. I would like to have Ms. Shmilova join us. On the one hand, Ekaterina Vladimirovna is already leading a very highly successful project, Serious. It's catering to all kinds of highly talented kids in our country. But just before this conference, we learned about the decision to use Serious as a basis to create not just a university, but a high-tech valley and a flagship project in the Russian educational system. In a certain sense, you have a blank check. But on the one hand, you can take the conventional track, or you can take the track of School 21 and all those 60–80,000 people who filed their applications to enroll with School 21. How are you going to act as you create the university and the new sci-tech valley? Well, thank you very much for the invitation to discuss our nearest plans, our joint plans. I think we should start the discussions from discussing the goals of education, because we often talk about the challenges, but we talk with a decreasing frequency about the goals of education. So first off, I would like to give the floor to our alumni, and we cater to all regions. On the one hand, we use the Olympic legacy in the interests of all the regions, because a specific nature of all the programs that we have in Serious is that we can reach to all the talents in all the regions. If the kid is motivated, if he was lucky to encounter the good teacher, he was able to transcend the boundaries of the school curriculum while at school. And the question is, how do we work to get the leader who's going to plug himself in the priority projects that we are all jointly developing? Can we have a very small video that I prepared for today? There's 7 great challenges. Russia faces a lot of challenges. Environment is the most relevant topic. We can trail a lot in technologies. By 2050, the share of old people can be 1/5 of all the population. Our energy can be trailing. This crisis can actually lead to wars for energy. Sooner or later, it's going to reflect on the people. Many new diseases emerge in the modern world. Many bacteria and viruses mutate, and therefore new treatment methods are required. We can't imagine our energy sector without our oil products or carbohydrates, hydrocarbons, but this is possible. Why not? Personally, I believe the most burning issue today is medicine, because everyone wants to live as long as possible, and even a little more. We are developing a system that would help improve the quality of healthcare and medicine and increase lifespans. Genome editing is a highly relevant topic. Most of all, I'm worried about losing our national cultural identity. This is the thoughts of the young. These are the challenges that we are facing, and they became the foundation of our educational programs that we develop with our partners. These programs show the opportunities that are opened for us by the universities and the companies that go about the national and global objectives that the kids talked about. I think this is the only opportunity for us to achieve this unique dynamics, this live knowledge, when the leaders come to teach the ways that they go in addressing those challenges. But then this gives the partnerships and this personal challenge that the kids face. We are talking about this high-tech educational environment, because the moment the kid understands that his individual is now part of the team, and it is no longer a part of formalized objectives, it's about the challenge. It's not just a small objective. The kid makes the decision about whether he wants to pursue this for any long period of time, or perhaps even the entire life. And these environments, they are certainly essential to moving ahead. These environments are essential, and we are creating them already. We are refocusing all those Olympic properties for educational goals, the goals set jointly. I was listening keenly, I was paying attention, I was taking notes about all the thoughts that colleagues expressed, but it's about, yes, staying in touch. It's about making joint objectives, it's about challenging your partners, it's about meeting the challenges of partners. But the best form you can support the talent is give increasingly challenging tasks and opening opportunities. This treatment of the world around you as a world of challenges, and the treatment of the new technologies as both challenges and opportunities, this is perhaps the unique approach that we should implement, and we can only implement this together. We should certainly focus on all the regions. Sirius is not just covering the 24 alumni of its own. About 20% of kids come to us twice and 3 times, and they are school children, and they are very often as skilled and as knowledgeable and as sophomores. And these kids really become students in an infrastructure property. You know that Mr. Putin personally laid the foundation of this project as a project that goes beyond the horizon. This is a nexus between sports science and culture. Leaders can teach leaders, and this really gives a unique team experience. I mean, it's 34 regions that are opening their own programs along the lines of Sirius. We are saying that these kids must be taken further. We need to stand by them. We need to sit on their shoulder before they find themselves in the top positions of our national projects, in the development, in the addressing of these major challenges. And what Valeria is saying, we are discussing opening these format schools in Sochi. we are talking that we are saying that this dynamism, this speed of choice, and the ability to benchmark yourself versus this global issue, that is going to give us the quick response to the efforts that we are applying in pursuit of these challenges. And this confidence in the genius is really increased manifold when we see young, just, very responsible kids, responsible for themselves and for ourselves, and they wait and they expect from us the guidance in how they can apply themselves in resolving those challenges and issues. They don't have the capability yet, but they certainly will have. It's our mission to create those environments. Thank you very much, Irina Vladimirovna. Yes, we are wishing you every success. Do make sure that you make good progress. You indeed are a flagship project in our educational system. Yes, time is going very fast, but Skolkovo Institute of Science and Technology is only a couple of years old, but it is in many respects a mature organization. You know, in this video that we saw a very interesting metaphor from Professor Fedorova. You know, she said that digital skills are new literacy. Well, this really chimes very well with the fact that mankind is entering a completely new phase in its development. Valeria spoke about training people with digital skills. What about data scientists? Can you train them in a School 21 format institution, or do you need Skoltech? I mean, you had the opportunity to start everything from scratch. Are we live? Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. I would like to start perhaps from a slightly different thing. What we assumed when we built Skoltech is this. You know, this tendency is quite obvious, and it wasn't one that emerged in the recent history. It's global in some fashion. The world is responding to this tendency. Well, we are not responding to it very much. The tendency is very simple. Education and industry go separate ways. What education is doing finds little relevance with industry. And what the industry is requiring is not really done by educational institutions. And unfortunately, you know, yesterday I spent half a day in Sberbank at a meeting of sorts that was summing up the educational activities in data science in IT in Sberbank. And you know, we've got a huge educational system, and it's very cumbersome, and waiting until it turns around in the direction that we need, it's just hopeless. I mean, we will not have enough time to wait. You don't want to expect the global changes because we are too big and too cumbersome. But this gap, the digital skills gap, the gap between the industry and education, it's widening. The real economy is requiring essentially different people. But this is not something that came about yesterday. You know, when an engineer loses the interest in math is the moment when he takes three pages to read that this function is going to travel through zero. I mean, the engineer is going to lose completely interest in mathematics if that takes 3 pages. Essentially, our educational system never changed from the 1950s. You know, if it did change, the change was minimal. When I go to my alma mater, I always go to the largest audiences. And basically, the lecturers talk, and all the kids are in their gadgets. It's like in that music video, в Питере пить. You know, the teacher talks away and the kids do their own thing. We are teaching the wrong things and the wrong way. And the wrongness is pretty radical. It's existential. So people that do come to universities understand that they will be irrelevant. They apply themselves to self-studies. They try to enlist additional courses. They are trying to glean some knowledge to bridge this gap, but the gap remains, and it's huge. As Verbing created the corporate university, I think this is a huge, humongous achievement, because Mr. Gref is probably one of the first people in Russia who understood that it's just hopeless to wait for the educational system to turn around in the right direction. We need to do something yourself. We opened Skoltech. The campus is built along the completely un-university-like lines. If you come, you will not recognize this to be a university. There's a lot of open spaces. We've got 150,000 square meters of property. But you will not understand that this is a classical university, because the lecture halls are minimal. Because the idea of organizing space is about organizing project work. The modern generation, this digital natives, as they call them, you know, teaching them digital skills, well, they can teach teachers digital skills. They can teach digital skills to, you know, their own tutors, because their skills are much more developed than on the part of the people who actually come to teach them. They will learn those skills themselves. You don't need to teach them. That's the idea. And another particular feature of this Generation Z is that these people, these kids, do not want to concentrate. This willingness to click, they can't concentrate. That gives them attention span of 7 to 8 minutes. After those 8 minutes, they want to handle a specific issue. And if they do not have enough theory to resolve that specific objective, they will read up. So our approach is learning by doing. It's project teams, and 90% of teams work, 90% of time the teams spend on working on projects. Senior students tutor junior students, PhD students teach senior students, and the professor is some way above. He's probably there at the outset, he's there at the end, but the main work is devolved to the lower levels. Our practice, our experience shows that perhaps the most effective and the only effective teaching method is training by doing. You know, until 30, we all think that we are different from our parents. After 30, we think that we are similar. Now, Gen Zs are probably the first generation that is actually different. They think differently, they treat information differently, and they need to be taught differently. But unfortunately, this is about the future. What do we do in the present? In the present, I think the idea of the corporate university, the idea of training en masse, is might be treated as redundant by some, but I think this is the only valid idea, perhaps the only valid idea as of today. Some other institutionalized methods might prove more effective in the future, but as of today, waiting for the entire educational system to turn around in the right direction is meaningless, is pointless. We need to rectify the errors that cannot be put right by the system itself. And I think the most important point that I would like to make at this panel is that the educational system of today that is relevant for the industry, for the economy, it is completely personalized. Unless it's personalized, it's not relevant. We have our own tools for that. Actually, they are AI-based, the AI that is so beloved with Sberbank, and that is genuinely tailored. But on the other hand, you need to understand the following. You know, when we got this personalized education from MIT. We inherited it from MIT. And when I started doing this personalized education, I saw the demerit to it. You know, it's a bit flawed. It's a bit ineffective in Russia. You know, if you take MIT, all the students pay one way or another. Maybe it's the football team, maybe it's the bank, maybe it's the parents. But, you know, 59K US, and then you have to actually live somewhere and eat something and do some entertainment. After all work and no play. Those kids are much more mature psychologically and mentally. They understand that they won't have a second go. They need to make their own choices. And in this sense, they are free to choose the course that they will need. I mean, every course takes a certain number of credits, a certain number of points, and you need to score a certain number of points of the entire duration of the curriculum. In our situation, this system will not work. It has not worked. It has not worked because the kids, are mostly not mentally mature. The mental immaturity is pretty much understandable. I mean, the living environment is different. Maybe it's the Soviet legacy, maybe it's the post-Soviet legacy. But what we did today is we merged the freedom of choice that we vested in students. On the other hand, we merged that with supervision. That's people sitting on the shoulder. That's PhD students giving mentorship to senior students, postdoctoral students giving mentorship. But this must be merged. These two things must be merged. They must be reconciled, because direct implementation of American systems fail, because a lot of people choose the easier things, not the most necessary things, but the easier things. People are wired. They are genetically wired to take the path of the least resistance. But again, to revisit, the main idea of mine is, if we talk about digital skills, you know, the new literacy, Professor Fedorov, in that video, spent many years leading the supercomputing center in Scotland, and he knows very well what he talks about. This is a new literacy indeed, the new numeracy indeed, and the person who came to our higher educational institution, be it an energy specialist, a biology specialist, or a data science, you know, this is really data science for the first 2 months, regardless of what your educational track is.
Because that's a new language, that's the new literacy, and we obviously try to make sure that people are taught this new literacy, this new language. Well, that's it for me. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Kuleshov. Oh, Mr. Arzhantsov, you are representing a higher economic school. That's a relatively young university, and it is constantly experimenting and going forward. Recently, the educational board decided to implement data culture. Could you please talk about that? Because in the video you said you had 36 BA programs. So basically, all streams of your educational programs are becoming interdisciplinary, and you're already implementing this approach. I have two questions here. How this decision was made? I talked with all our deans and with 5 universities that are trying to be recognized as global ones, but I haven't seen that response from them. They have not decided to actually implement this method. And you are implementing data culture in non-technical university. That's the second question, because you have quite a lot of humanities and social studies in your BAs. Could you please tell us how this decision was made, and perhaps some of the takeaways of your first experience of implementing the data culture in the High School of Economy? Yes, thank you so much. While talking about the answer, how the decision was made, perhaps a few words about the background. Yes, the university has only marked marked its 26th anniversary, basically. Quite young, just a few MAs in economics. That's where we started with. The first programs related to mathematics and IT appeared in 2000s. In 2014, we have created our university that was a kind of an enlargement of the previous university, and another process was undergoing. The High School of Economics implemented the minor system. Minor is a term from American education. When a person selects his major and also a minor. And for minors, we have a 1 day per week, the second and the third year of the BA studies. And this kind of a migration of peoples, you know. The students go and migrate basically to the new to other sections of the university, and they have this second speciality minor in their diplomacy, in their graduation. And data science was the most popular. Now, we understood that basically everyone wanted to go to data science, and the places there were then offered in social media. That was a major surprise for us, and therefore we decided to go to Data Culture project, which is a more large-scale project. Now, data minor is 4 semesters. The following scheme we proposed: first semester a Python language. That's the foundation. Second, the introduction to analysis of data. It has the interrelations with mathematics and the simplest models of analysis. Third semester is the modern tools of machine learning. Machine learning, by the way, is a very non-trivial paradigm, because we have only 1 semester to explain what is the essence of ML and how it actually works. And the 4th semester is the applied problems of data analysis. And we're using the standard problems like recognizing the images, working with big data, recognizing speech and other things. We are looking at these applications and trying to understand how can you implement this knowledge. Now, the students who major in applied mathematics and informatics cannot obviously go to these courses. And there are groups, there are groups of business informatics, our engineering part, engineering students who are more advanced here, and economics, but there are also culturology, historians, but they have selected data as a minor. So they're working there. So data culture, the project that was proposed, and the idea behind that was the following: in all BA programs, the data analysis courses are now included in all of them. So foreign language used to be a requirement, and now, apart from that, there is a requirement to learn data analysis as part of your education in Higher School of Economy. 2017 was a pilot year, was only half of the programs that were covered, and now, by this year, all programs have this course introduced. Apart from the required programs, well, since the trajectory of the educational experience is very important, we give the courses, we offer the courses to select. But there is still there are obligatory data courses, and you can select data as a minor. When we launched the project, what was our major concern and major challenge and risk? Would we be able to find the necessary amount of professors to cover all of our programs of our huge university? Because at our computer science universities, the professors still have to educate the students, but well, that was a success. Now we have 30 plus professors. In spring we'll have more than that, and now I have calculated half of the professors are from the university. These are the professors or the assistant professors who did not have the teaching experience, but decided to enjoy, and there are to join the project. And there are people from the industries, because they really wanted to. They were excited about that, because they wanted to understand how to teach data to managers, economists, and legal experts, and social experts, psychology students, and they were really excited about that. And now all these plans are on the website. You can now see our result, the status. We have a very good feedback culture for all courses, and at the end of the course we get the feedback from the customers, and you can see what they think about the professors and about the course. We have positive things, many positive feedback, but there was some skills lacking in some cases. We overdid it. Some students are asking some delivery project work. But on the whole, the experiment was a success. And a major underpinning component is online. By the way, our Russian School of Economics is one of the leaders in terms of online in Russia among Coursera courses. We have developed 3 English-speaking specializations together with San Diego University and together with Yandex. You can now access them from Coursera. And you can use these projects as part of Data Culture project. At the same time, the subjects, the courses from Data Culture are also being migrated to Coursera. Now we are making videos for the courses for design and fashion and other courses. Now these courses can be offered as an online experience, as part of a blended learning experience. Now when we talk about online programming lectures, this will be much in demand, and students love to watch videos because the programming and developing is quite a hard topic. So they would love to kind of, fortify their learning experience. So this is kind of a background, and our faculty was actually included as in the major community. We have attracted many people. We have talked with students from different programs. We have already launched many projects with that are blended with other industries and with corporations. And sometimes we do some joint projects, and this is a very important step forward. Another major indicator of success of this project was the demand from the MA programs and PhD programs. And we now want to integrate that in MA and PhD, and because there is demand, and we do think that it will be a success. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Arzhantsov. Well, basically what you said is that it not only improves the quality of the education, but it raises the potential of the entire university. It kind of delivers the synergy in terms of the development of the institution. Well, Mr. Graf, obviously everyone would love to know your opinion on the issues discussed on this panel. Obviously, Sberbank is one of the leaders in digital transformation. We are obviously working within the industry that is subject to many disruptions right now, but we know that in 2019 all processes should be AI powered, all processes of our bank. But perhaps a few words about what you think, what changes should happen in our educational system to make sure it is in line with the challenges that we face today and that we have discussed extensively today. Well, Mr. Kuleshov already talked about the trend, is the increasingly important role of the corporate universities. Now, what you said yesterday we had an expert meeting of the University of Data, and Mr. Kuleshov and Mr. Arzhantsov, we discussed that topic. The most important part was what to do next, because many managers underwent the data courses, but we obviously want to get people that will graduate from the new quality of universities. Thank you so much. It is a great pleasure to be here. All the panelists shared their insights, and they were so fantastic, so revolutionary, and we have such a great experts here. It's really hard to add anything new. First of all, I would like to thank everyone for sharing their fantastic insights. that, you know, really makes you think about that. And this is one of the most important things in our culture, the thing that we try to roll out, you know, to try to encourage people to think and to not to repeat the same things that we did yesterday, because what made you successful yesterday would not necessarily make you successful today. Now, Mr. Keskala, if you respond honestly to your question, what to do in the educational system, my honest answer is I don't know. I listened to what Alexander Kuleshov talked about and other colleagues talked about. You know, this is a non-trivial task. If I had an answer, I would share it with everyone and would start doing it right away. But this is a non-trivial task. On each stage, we face a lot of issues that we have to resolve. And I do not think that we have this kind of a single model, really. You know, one of the most important thing here is to follow this rule. One what question has hundreds of answers that would all be correct. And what Mr. Kuleshov talked about the personalized educational system, is very important. I think this experience is of critical importance, actually. And we are going to discuss that topic with you, because we are obviously lagging behind here. And it is a major challenge for me. How do you combine these two things? People do not want to personalize. There are doubts. Each person has a doubt, really, whether he or she will be able to make it or not. So that's one part of the story. The other part of the story, that if you are afraid to do that step, you might lose something in your life. You might lose the opportunity. And I think that the cultural uniqueness of each country should be taken into account when the programs are developed. So 3 issues. This one, finding the gap between the current knowledge and the knowledge that are in demand. Secondly, trying to reveal the gap between the knowledge that are in demand and the knowledge that are being generated by the educational system as a whole. Whatever this system is, high school system, university system, or corporate or professional educational system. And the third question that you asked, how do you overhaul the entire educational process, and how do you build any educational process in the most efficient manner? These are the 3 key questions. Well, I would like to say that for us, the agenda is as challenging as yours. Each day we face these challenges, and we need to be relevant. How do you remain relevant? We are at the forefront, you know, at the front of the market, really. The trailblazers. At the same time, when we have this feeling that, yes, we got it. Yes, we are in the flow. Yes, we are in the hype. But then we can see the gap that is starting to grow between us and between some others, because we're not generating. We're at the forefront, yes, but we are not. Sometimes, very often actually, we're not the pioneers who generate the trend, but it is the market that generates the trend. And the market is not one company, it is the myriad of the companies that generate various offers. And obviously it is the myriad of combinations of our customers who actually generate the demand. And the connection between the first and the second element gives you the wave, really, that is needed in the market. And this wave, we need to respond to that wave, you know. And then the only response is the only solution is to be relevant. So the first gap is the gap between the companies and the future development of the market. Meaning the trend, sometimes there is a trend that starts to move the market, and you cannot explain why it actually is working like that. But, you know, me as a CEO, what keeps me awake at night? Each time, every second, I try to recognize the trends that we need to support tomorrow. And, you know, having such a complex structure of business as we have, and very very, you know, diverse, we have very diverse model, very diverse businesses, and in this relevance in different in our different business streams means totally different methods, totally different employees, and totally different ways to prepare these employees for staying relevant in line with these trends. Now, the second challenge for me is, how do you create the environment within the team who would remove the atmosphere, the environment that would remove all the bottlenecks and barriers. There is a great leader in IBM. She is really great. We have many years of very good relationship, and she told me once, you know, the hardest thing here is not to associate yourself with the product that you produce. Because as you start to produce a product in the market, you think that's it, and then you sometimes need to radically change the product due to some new trends. Sometimes you need to reverse the entire corporation, and you're not ready for that because you love your previous product and you stick to it, and it is actually in demand on the market. But no, you need to reverse right now. And, you know, I said, you know, she said that I'm unfortunate with my business. I always have this story. As we produce, as we invent something, we invented it, and then we go to a totally different direction. And the team does not support me because they don't understand why we need to go to the reverse side. We have a success here. And I thought, you know, that really resonates with me. I said, you know, I have the same story. You know, I have all the time to challenge the situation. I have to reverse, first of all, myself, and then the entire team. Because you have achieved some success, and then you have to reverse the people, all the team. You have to reverse them to another area that is promising. And it is not obvious, because, I mean, it could have been obvious, like, you know, you go there and you have the success story. But it's not obvious. You have to move, you have to exert a lot of efforts, and invest a lot of money, unfortunately, to go along with the new trends. And it is a major risk because it might not be successful. And what Ivan talks about the fact that the higher school of economics is based on new principles. And many years ago, when we started to implement this program, from the very start, we said that one of the most important tasks that we have to educate is the tolerance to the feedback among the students and professors alike, to make sure that the feedback is delivered in the right time and is responded to properly. And how do you respond properly to the feedback? By changing yourself, not by becoming angry. This is a major paradigm shift in the culture, and it is important for each university or educational institution or corporation. This is a kind of a dominating element that could pave the way for your success in the future. Now, I would say that the creation of the culture of constant feedback and constant feedback with the market linked to the practice encouraging critics, focusing on the most important things, and time management. These are the most important skills, because currently we do lack time. Time resource is one of the most precious one, because, you know, Alexander Kuleshov said that students listen to the lecture with one ear, and, you know, another half of their brain is using their devices to chat. You know, this is the attempt to resolve two tasks at one point of time, and obviously this multitasking does not deliver the results. You need to prioritize the most important thing and concentrate on that.
And these are the responses that we must come up with. They are not obvious. And Our attempt to implement the model of education, the new model of education, the School 21 that we are launching on the 16th of November, the first cohort. And thank you all our colleagues who were involved, really outstanding kids, just wonderful. The education is free, the most important thing. We are paying for everything. It's a lot of an expense that we are meeting that expense. But the kids that went through the selection, the most rigorous we could imagine, they are incredibly motivated. When we are hiring 500 out of 80,000, and this is not selection by credentials that they got from I don't know what educational institution. They enroll in it from after graduating from the higher school of education, from Harvard, from Moscow State University, etc. We get students from graduates. I mean, this is incredible motivation, and this really is about bridging this gap. That really motivates me. This is about granting the opportunities to everyone, regardless of whether the kids can pay. And in this sense, the model of School 21 is a great model that prefigures the education that we need. You need to be motivated and skilled and not wealthy. You don't need to build the system in an elite school or in an elite university. We have learned to do that somehow. But how do you motivate? And how do you make the educational process available, accessible, inclusive for everyone, regardless of income? And this is what we are working on. Probably that's going to prove the most difficult thing to cope with. But I think if we solve the problem of why and the problem of motivation, then everything is going to roll much easier from there on. And I think answering the question how that really faces us, how do we prove to be the best employer? It's not about having the best workplace, the best engineering environment. It's important for engineers. I mean, if people can't answer the question why, you're not relevant for them. People must understand why they are doing what they are doing, what the challenge is that faces their squad, their team as a whole. They must find it interesting. They must find it challenging, perhaps within the reasonable boundaries of their capability, perhaps within the boundaries of their ability. You don't want to break them. But the motivational objective, the why, this is one of the dominating education. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Let's move on. Thank you, Mr. Greff. I think in part you did answer the question why. You know, when you spoke about the 3 challenges for yourself, and you mentioned that these are the challenges for you as a chief executive officer. What if the deans, what if the rectors, presidents of all schools and universities, what if they understood themselves with their own 3 challenges? What if they assumed all these 3 challenges to be their own? I mean, they're all applicable to any university. The relevance, the interdisciplinary barriers, and the love, the guilty love to a product that you created yesterday. The focus on the next best thing. You know, the great Peter Drucker famously said that the professional management is the same in a church, in a bank, or in an industrial outfit. I think that is applicable here. Dear participants, actually we have 700 people today, and not all of the people were able to get the seat in this room. We are broadcasting a live feed to a next room. Thank you for the questions. Some of them got answered already, but I would like to ask all the panelists to take just 2 minutes, very briefly, to answer the questions that you get with different wording. And the record-setting question is, how do you train the teachers to meet the educational challenges? I mean, we agreed that the challenge is not a challenge of the future, it's a challenge of the present. How do you train the teachers? Valeria did present a project where there are no teachers, but the organizers are still there, the constructors, the architects of School 42 and School 21, they are still there. Who would like to be the first to answer that question? Alexander Petrovich, please, sir. You know, I really think that there are no special methodologies to train teachers. Since the times of Plato and Euclides, nothing really changed. Education probably evolved from one Plato working with 3 disciples. Education evolved into a mass business. But I think today we no longer need mass education. We need elite education. And elite education and the tutors, the teachers that are capable of giving elite education, they come from the environment. You know, yesterday I spoke with KPMG on our internal problems, and I said this one thing. You know, why does Ovechkin not play in the Russian hockey league? They can't pay him the same money. He is patriotic enough, but he does not play in the Russian domestic hockey league because every person is trying to implement his or her own potential as much as possible. And self-implementation, fulfillment, is about meeting the harshest competition in the most difficult situation. He will play in the National Hockey League in the United States regardless of the money that Russia offers him, because the environment for him is NHL and not KHL in Russia. How is this relevant? When you come up with the critical mass of meritocracy, the critical mass of people that give peer review based on achievement and can understand that achievement, that environment engenders the teachers of the kind that you need. Thank you, Alexander Petrovich. Alexander Vladimirovich? Yeah. Well, actually, the problem is pretty acute, and I would say that to find the teachers and train the teachers, any means is good. In the same data culture project, if we talk about that, we had several seminars hosted by Yandex, among other things, for all the interested HSE teachers. We talked, we told, we trained, we gave introductory courses, and that gave effect. Very important to have teachers from the industry, from academic institutions, but my experience shows that about 10–15% of the people, my coevals at the university, when they went to companies, they find this need to teach, and it's good. I mean, if people are let to teach for 4 hours a week, so you don't lose an employee, that's great. That's our principle. If you learned, teach someone else. In HSC, there are teaching assistants, starting from the sophomore age. Students are enlisted to consult, not just to train, but to consult. So we are finding teachers where we can find the teachers.
Comments on this, how to prepare faculty, the new type faculty for the new challenges?
That's a good question. I'm not sure that we really prepare teachers and faculty at all. When you think about the educational system, there's a lot of theory training. If you're going into higher education faculty, you're focused more on research, typically. What we have found, and we've done some work with some schools in the United States, is we have launched a program where we bring teachers through the sort of learning experience that we want them to use in the classroom. And I think things are becoming much more project-oriented. You know, it's a different sort of environment where teachers are collaborating more. They're more data aware. They're working more in projects focused on core challenges and a different way of delivering and kind of being a coach as opposed to lecturing and so forth. So we've had some success with some schools now adopting this and sort of taking the teachers through the sort of learning environment that we want to have for the students.
So your points are really about new consideration of the learning environment and about really new set of skills.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Idris.
Yeah, let me offer 2 practical ways how we might be able to teach the teachers a little bit differently. In Malaysia, we were looking at the quality of our English teachers at one time. They had been trained and they had passed their English qualification. That's why they've been teaching for the last 20 years. But the standards have changed. So we got all 70,000 English teachers to sit for the latest Cambridge placement test. And 70% of them did not make it. So you know them by name. So you know exactly the area that they are shortfall. So the test was the thing that was instrumental in us knowing the 70% of the 70,000 teachers that did not make it. So we have to send them for evening classes and for weekend classes together with the British Council, re-engineer the whole thing. That's a massive piece of work. So essentially, to me, you have to put them through an assessment. If the teachers fail the test, how are they going to get the kids to pass the test? Fundamental. The other approach that's probably innovative was, if you took any one of the universities here in Russia, you take the lecturer, the professor, together with a group of students in the business school, and you say to them, you have a quantum leap project. The teachers, together with the lecturer, turn up at a company to radically sit there for the next 6 weeks, but don't make the lecturer be the team leader. Get one of the students to be the leader because of experiential learning. Then that group of people will be in that company for 6 weeks, really going through the profit and loss statement and the things that they needed to do to make concrete things that to move it forward. I can tell you, I do agree with you, Alexander. Learning by doing is the most important thing here. Because it's when you want to solve a problem, it's not just a problem that is solved using one technique. It's a myriad of tools that's available, be it digital, etc. But I think if you got the lecturer to sit together with the students and reverse the role in the industry and solve a real problem that they have there, I think that's where you'll find a complete change in the rethinking. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Idris. Valeria, может быть, несколько слов?
Да, я хочу просто...
Valeria? Well, perhaps I could warn, just make a disclosure that I'm not against professionals and educators and academics. I had an academic career myself, but there are three major problems. The first is cognitive limitations of every person. We do know that we are not as encyclopedic in our knowledge versus Google. Teachers get deformed. If you are the most smart person in the audience for the past 20 years, that really distorts your perception of reality. And the world where we are living, expertise is becoming increasingly fragile in that world. If you are an expert today, it's not a fact that you're going to be an expert in the things that you're going to have to do tomorrow. What do we do about this? I think the role of faculty, the role of experts and professionals is really changing, and I do stand with the idea that professionals do want to share their knowledge. They do want to train. It's not necessary for them to get certified in teaching, and you can use that. In my school, I actually do enlist the services who are enthusiastic about their profession, but they don't have to be a certified teacher. And the role of teachers, the role of faculty is in making, energizing the cognitive interest. How do you build this architecture for the increasingly complex things, for the increasingly complex problems to hold this internal motivation? And then the role of teachers is going to be limited to perhaps tutorship, mentorship. That will all depend on the track, on the educational track, on the, all the other various things. The teachers. Well, if you talk about school teachers, you need to train them in the same programs that we teach kids. They're going to have to immerse them into the same interdisciplinary environment, and that environment will have to turn their further work and their further education to this network laboratory. It's a single network laboratory social program. I think these teachers will develop and are developing not just educational programs. They are doing that for entertainment. They are doing that to self-organization, and they will have all the tools to plug themselves into whatever educational progress, whatever educational process they are responsible for. And what you're going to be doing is putting together a similar panel, a panel similar to this, and you will have a similarly interested alumni. These people will be responsible for these big ideas that we are essentially dissecting and simplifying to the level of the first grade. They will change the living standards. Mr. Gref? You know, Idris gave a wonderful example of the system that they are implementing in Malaysia. Thank you very much, Idris. There's a lot of disciples of your program in Russia, big fast results. But you spoke about those KPIs, the indicators. They can be red, they can be green. We are mostly afraid of the watermelon indicators that are green on the outer side and red on the inside. You know, we're all talking about watermelon farming in our corporate vernacular. You know, we are really trying to make a departure from the KPI management. We are really trying to develop this intellectual management system, and that really eats up the current managerial activity. And initially we had a lot of protests inside the company because people did not understand where their place is. We used to make all those decisions, but then we are no longer empowered to make all those decisions. What are we for then? And having accomplished this cultural shift, we actually found out that the things that we used to do is not about humans. That was not for the humans to do. That was for the machines to do. We used to dedicate a lot of our time to reproduce these simple, monotonous things. We essentially comprise a quilt of habits. And as we float in this, get sloshed about in this sea of habits, we find it comfortable. As we are taken out of our comfort zone, that is a great discomfort. You know, doing things differently compared to the way we did that yesterday, that's a challenge. But this also engenders us great satisfaction. On the one hand, it's a problem story. On the other hand, we get the greatest reward possible. Because all of us, we are dopamine alcoholics. We are dopamine dependent. And for this next shot of dopamine, we do a lot of stupid things. We sacrifice a lot for that dopamine shot. And as we go about resolving those untrivial objectives, we get this dopamine shot. That's what Alexander Petrovich, you know, Ovechkin is not going to get the same amount of dopamine in Russia. He's going to score, he's going to be the first. Well, he's not going to get that shot over there, but he will fight for that dopamine shot. He may not actually be the first, but this will be a major stimulant, major incentive to break through. So, for us, the story here is to create this environment. It has to be a fashionable environment for the teachers to rub shoulders in. It has to be super prestigious. It's difficult. I remember working as a teaching assistant in that chair in St. Petersburg. We had those environments. We had those arguments, and our revered professors challenged us. They challenged us to prove not to be mediocre. We spent nights. We studied long into the small hours to make that next step. And that was my most vivid memory. I mean, we used to have that very good tradition. The old professors used to, I mean, in St. Petersburg, they used to have this tradition to host their students in their own flats. And I think this environment is wonderful. We need to take the teachers out of their comfort zones. And they are spending 90% of their time on that function. The function that is not right for them. They need to be put into an environment that is challenging for them. They might not come out victorious, but once they do come out victorious, they are going to get that dopamine shot, and the dopamine is going to be a reward for that personal growth. This knowledge that they vanquished something that they used to be afraid of yesterday, that is the stuff to drive. And this is something that we are trying to do in Sberbank, because strong people are difficult to retain unless you give them additional challenges. If you don't challenge them, you're going to leave. And this is very... I mean, we are always afraid of people who perform highly, because we're going to lose that person. We are afraid to lose that person, either up or laterally, but give the person a new challenge, because this high performer is a risk of losing that person. So on the one hand, you need to move away from resolving trivial tasks. Teachers must not be afraid to resolve untrivial tasks. What Valeria said, artificial intelligence creates new opportunities. You know, I mean, AI is not going to replace people. They will put people into what they are best at doing. Artificial intelligence is just going to do what we cannot do.
Thank you so much, Mr. Graf. Unfortunately, the time of our panel discussion is over. We have to wrap up. I would like to thank everyone again for the insights and for your fantastic revolutionary thoughts that you have shared with us. One of the issues, one of the questions that was the most popular, will it be possible to look at the presentations after the end of the panel discussion? Yes, they will be available. We are always making it available on our corporate website. We have a conferences section at our corporate website, and at the end, if the speakers agree, we will obviously publish these materials. Now, just to wrap up the key takeaways, I would like to say that we are all waiting for a new innovative approaches in organizing the educational experience and major shifts in the model of every educational institution. But at the same time, as it was said today, there is no one-fits-all solution, and we need all to understand that these are not the traditional projects, but this is an experiment of trying to find something new, and we'll try to find these points of growth, try to discuss them and to discuss them with the communities, and we'll try to make sure that they actually work. Another insight that we got today is the ecosystem, the approach of the ecosystem, the approach of the partnership. All of us, the stakeholders of education, have to learn with each other. You know, the corporate universities have to learn from the traditional ones and vice versa, and so on. And obviously, the last topic that we have discussed, and many of your questions were devoted to that. How do you prepare and train professors and trainers for the corporations that would be relevant for today's world? I think this is something that we do need to work on together, but obviously the leadership, the champions, should be the people who became the leaders of these organizations. They should drive that change. And as Mr. Graf said, the CEOs in their organizations and companies, and I think that Mr. Graf crystallized it, put it point blank, that what a CEO should be like to ensure the success story of the organization. And the last takeaway is that, yes, we have major challenges, but we have major opportunities that all of us have, not only to be relevant in this new world, but to be valuable to the new generation of students. Thank you so much. We have a 30 minutes break and then we'll continue the discussion. Thank you.